Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
All right.
Hey, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, everyone.
Let's see here.
Well, we got our camera to work this week, and it's kind of comfortable. I mean, actually, it's more than kind of comfortable. We've got we sort of made the sofa so that we can sit right next to each other, and we got the better camera to work. Yeah, it's good to see everyone.
Can you see anybody? I'm trying to get into my other computer so I can read the comments.
Well, it looks like we have seven people.
Oh, hey.
Seven people are
Oh,
on.
excellent.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah.
Let me see.
Welcome to week.
What week is this?
It's
This
week
is
five.
six. This is
No,
week.
week six.
Yeah.
Welcome to week six. The color is indigo,
Mhm.
and a new look at tithing tonight. Before we get into that, the indigo color, I just want to say that we had Lisa and I just went to a gala ball. Some of you maybe that are watching were at the ball at the Black Swan Country Club last night?
It was Friday.
Friday Friday night.
Yeah.
Yep. And there we went with 10 people.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing time. We had a great time of dancing, and we wore our indigo colors
Yep.
for the for this week's color, and the crown chakra.
Rose says we're both so shiny. I don't know what she means. We're so shiny. You're shiny, Rose.
Hi, Rose.
Hi, Rose and Jay. I think Jay's
Jay.
in the room and probably Lynn. Let's see who's in the room. Give us all your comments. So I got my computer here. There it is. We got the Spiritual Economics book
Yep.
right there.
Yep. We had a full day at Unity today. We did teach this class on Wednesday night,
Mhm.
and so this is a repeat of the Wednesday night class, and it's the subject most of you know is already is it's a new look at tithing,
Yeah.
and it's really funny. You know, this subject is um, is it's kind of a turnaround
Oh, I
almost.
love it. I love the way he basically says Jesus does not talk about tithing, and the two times Jesus does mention tithing in the Bible, it's to kick some people's butts about it. Like but it's the best discussion I've ever heard on tithing. So I'm excited that we're going to do this tonight.
Well, the thing I like about it is it doesn't kick tithing out. It just redefines it
Yeah.
uh, for its practical use. Is that close up better? Is that okay?
Our close up.
I just sort of brought it in a little bit closer.
Okay, yeah,
Is
that
that
looks.
okay?
Sounds good to me. Yeah, yeah. Now you can see everything. You can
Yeah.
see everything that's going on. Now we look especially shiny. All right,
Funny.
perfect.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. We will take a moment and just get centered. Just rest in God. Just abide for a moment. Recenter ourselves and feel the presence of God here in our midst. And I don't want that to just be words, you guys. I really do want to just be centered for just even a moment. You know, the Course in Miracles talks about it being a holy instant. So we just breathe in the Christ energy, and then just let out anything that's that just needs
Do
to
what
be
he
let out.
does. Just do what he does. That's pretty
she,
funny.
she's laughing.
I'm sorry. I was totally centered until that thing. That's good. Okay, good. Here, keep going.
We open our hearts to appreciate the gift of each person in this group, knowing we are here by divine appointment.
Oh,
So thank you so much for joining us.
yes.
Thank you for being here, and we're just having fun. We're having fun, and we're so honored and appreciative to have so many friends that will join us.
Yeah. Lynn's here.
Hi, Lynn.
Lynn says she just listened to Vicki on Gather and sounds like you had fun. We did. We all met down in Boston on Friday morning, and Vicki has really started this Teachers of God meeting, and yeah, it's fun. Just like people have been coming from all over. We have my friend Marielle is here. She's in the other room right now, and she told me not to ask her to come on, but you know me, I'm sure I will. And she came from Wisconsin. We had people from Washington D.C., Maryland. Where else? New York. We had somebody who took a bus.
Where's Peter? Where's Peter from? Isn't Peter? Peter came. He's with Jane.
Oh yeah. So Jane Marie. Yep. So he's from Holland.
Okay.
They came from Canada.
That's right.
David Hoffmeister, and they came. Yep. And they showed up in church this morning. A whole bunch of people showed up in church at Unity this morning.
Yeah.
And it's just cool. Just cool. We can meet each other now in the flesh. I like it.
Well, there were 25 people at the Teachers of God meeting in Quincy. It was a big meeting.
Yeah.
So we are grateful for the spiritual growth that is unfolding and the relationships which are forming. And we commit to co-creating a space of unlimited possibility. We pray this after the nature of the living Christ. And so it is. Amen. And
yes, Jane Marie. Do you know Jane? Yes, she said she knows you. Lynn says, was Jane Marie there? She knows her.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Jane Marie.
Yeah.
Jane Marie was in church today. She was in Quincy at the Teacher of God meeting, and she was also in church this morning.
Yeah.
So at the Unity on the river.
Yeah.
So the affirmation for the week: I have renewed my thoughts and beliefs. I am a positive influence on my world as I move forward with a consciousness of prosperity. I have renewed my thoughts and beliefs. And I really believe that we have renewed our thoughts and beliefs about prosperity. It's really such a breath of fresh air to have these new ideas about prosperity, these new beliefs, and even the belief on tithing. It's really it's refreshing to have a clearer picture of the background for the laws or the beliefs where tithing came from, and really what it's best used for as far as the term tithing. The scripture for the week it's one of my favorite. I keep hearing Shipley use it over and over, and it's probably because Butterworth uses it many times in this book. Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, Paul said, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And I just don't really think about the last part of that scripture verse too much, but it's sort of highlighted for me tonight, where he says, so that you may discern what is the will of God. So the reason, and that's why the Course in Miracles is so helpful as a teaching device, as a teaching tool, and also so is the New Testament. For me, once I understand it in the metaphysical version, the Gnostic version, and the verses really come to life for me. But the reason that I'm transformed by the renewing of my mind is so that I may discern, understand, and see with Christ's vision what the will of God is, and what is good and acceptable and perfect, so that I can see that and know that what's false just needs to be brought to the truth so I can let it go. So I love that part.
Me too.
So you want to read
Well, what we were talking about is the chapter was so short that we were thinking that we would just read it and comment on it, and like you guys can type in questions if you want to get your books and maybe follow along. But this chapter it is really a new look at tithing. It's the first discussion I've ever seen on tithing that really just doesn't tell you have to tithe, but it talks about giving. So that we'll read.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. So it says a new look at tithing. A study of the subject of prosperity invariably includes the practice of tithing. In most cases, it is taught with a dogmatism that is unparalleled by the whole study of truth. Tithers swear by the practice and speak glowingly of the benefits that have come to them. However, many persons feeling the pinch of economic stringency have great reservations about it. You want to do a paragraph each?
Yeah, and I want to talk about that for just a minute.
Okay.
Because I think I mean, Butterworth doesn't have it written this way anywhere in this chapter, but one of the benefits of tithing is actually the fear. One of the benefits of tithing is because tithing brings up fear, and fear brings up a belief in lack. So for me, one of the benefits of tithing is so that I can notice that I'm not trusting God as my source. One of the benefits of tithing is that it has allowed me to, in a structured, practical way, I'm able to first of all notice that I have fear, or notice that I have you can feel when you don't think you have enough money. You can feel, and especially if you have a bill that's $1,000 and you only have 800. You feel a disparity there, and tithing sort of says, you know what? I know that it looks like I don't have enough in the bank, but I'm going to take a look at this fear first and let it go. I'm going to give it to Jesus, or the God of my the God of my belief. I'm going to give it to the divine Father, Mother, God. I'm going to give it away as a belief so that it's let go, and I'm going to now trust that God is my source, is the source of all that I have, or all that I feel that I might need. And even on a needs basis, I don't need anything really, because I'm off the mark if I'm thinking that I'm needy. So it just brings up all kinds of things, all kinds of obstacles. The tithing idea is often given mystical roots, dating biblically to the book of Genesis, where Abraham gave a tithe of all he had to Melchizedek, the king of Salem, who had blessed him. Today there are whole religious denominations that require tithing of all their adherents. Many other religious groups suggest it as a helpful discipline, building on the foundation belief that tithing is God's law. Many highly persuasive arguments are set forth.
At the very outset, let us establish the point that tithing is an excellent practice that we strongly recommend to anyone who is seeking to change his or her life from indigence to affluence. And in this chapter, we want to probe deeply into the practice beyond the superficial, illogical, and materialistic way it is normally approached. Tithing is normally encouraged for all the wrong reasons. Some of the claims made and the arguments set forth make the tithing concept a gross materialization of beautiful spiritual law.
Is the practice of tithing a fundamental in this new sight in truth? Is it biblical? Was it a part of Jesus' teaching? Where are the origins? And how has it evolved to contemporary times?
I love this. It says Bible students know that the Old Testament often refer to the practice of tithing The classic reference is Malachi 3:10, "Bring ye the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and prove me now herewith, says Jehovah of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it." It is a beautiful shape. I love how he says it. He goes, Eric Butterworth, he's so good. It is a beautiful statement, sheer poetry. Who could take issue with it? Of course, there is no reason to do so. However, neither is there reason to not examine the practice in the time of Malachi.
And the other thing I love about Eric Butterworth, he's a Unity minister, and he's not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. He's really being truthful. He's really being authentic in digging deeper into this subject. Under Levitical law, the tithe was a form of taxation required of the Hebrews, a portion of the produce of the earth and of their herds. It wasn't a love offering or charitable contribution at all. In a religious form of government, a theocracy, tithing has often been the method of creating revenues to support the government. Since God is the true ruler, it is easily rationalized that the government treasury is the storehouse of the Lord.
I'm trying to sign in here, guys, and it's not letting me. I always forget my password. Let's see.
Oh, I know it.
No, well.
You're probably not using the right one. Okay.
Well, it's making you either sign in with your email. Let's see here. It's not letting me. It's not letting me type in any comments until I put this in.
In early Israel, under the leadership of Moses, the new nation was formed by dividing the body into 12 tribes. One of the tribes, the tribe of Levi, was singled out to serve as the priestly class. Again, in a theocracy, the government is managed by the priests.
Where are you? Okay, you're still there.
Thus, the Levites became the bureaucracy, and the system by which they were supported was the tithe. There was nothing voluntary about it. The Mosaic Code was rigidly enforced, and in some cases, infractions were punishable by death. This is the biblical source from which our contemporary practice of tithing was derived.
Yeah. So, however, the tithe did not originate there. Some form of tithing was practiced almost universally throughout all the ancient world. We find evidence of it in Babylonia, in Persia, in Egypt, in Rome, and even in China. Keep in mind that it was a tithe tax, which probably originated as a tribute laid down by a shrewd conqueror or ruler on his subjects. It may be assumed that the customs of dedicating a tenth of the spoils of war to the gods, quote unquote, in time gave rise to a religious extension of the phrase giving the tenth to God. It is highly likely that when Abraham gave a tithe of his flocks to, how do you say his name?
Melchizedek.
What he said.
Melchizedek.
The king of Salem, he was actually paying a tribute to the ruler for safe passage through his land.
Not understanding all this, or possibly not wanting to see it, religious teachers and writers wanting to cite authorities for the contemporary tithing practice have pointed to all the many instances in the Old Testament where tithe is referred to. The argument that is usually used is, if a tenth was required under the law in those olden times, it is certainly no less fitting that we should give it cheerfully now. Now, without judging the merits of tithing, isn't this line of reasoning somewhat illogical? Under their law, the Israelites were bound to many restrictive observances. There are references to people actually being stoned to death for nothing more than gathering wheat on the Sabbath day. For this was a clear infraction of the fourth commandment. But we do not put people to death in modern times for playing golf on Sunday. But times have changed, we say, but why should the rigidity of the tithing observance remain unchanged, even if it was a giving process in biblical times, which it was not?
So I love this. Jesus seemed to make a career out of upgrading the laws and observances of the Old Testament into the light and needs of contemporary times. For instance, with many of the commandments, he said, in essence, you have heard it said of old, but I say unto you. Then he gives a practical insight for living. He was no rebel intent on breaking down the rule of ecclesiastical law.
Ecclesiastical law. Right.
He was a Jew reared in the traditions of the synagogue, and he said, I have come not to abolish them, the laws, but to fulfill them.
Matthew 5:17. Right. If you are interested, carefully examine the Ten Commandments. They would appear to be a series of restrictive laws, outlining lines of conduct by which the Israelites must live. However, wise students of practical religion will break them down to their underlying essence, where they can see them as a supportive framework for the spiritually immature.
Right. So this is exactly what the reason I like this so much, because it really is a new look on tithing. Like we're just going to get into. So we've just been reading. We're going to do the whole chapter because it's very short, and well, we hope we can get through it. But it's he's given a history now that tithing was really not a spiritual practice. It was.
Well, it sort of was. It was set up.
It was a tax.
It was a tax, but at the time the government were priests, so it was
right,
a way.
But it was not what it is now. Tithing is now said that if you give 10%, you'll get it back. That you're tithing to acknowledge God as your source and supply.
Right.
And that's not actually anything Jesus ever said.
Right. It's not accurate. But it is a good practice because amazing things happen, but not for the reason that you think.
Well, yeah, because he goes on to say, like, tithing is just like, he's going to say it, it's like training wheels on a bike. But this is a law. Giving is a law. And Jesus talked a lot about giving. He never talked about tithing. He never gave it, like, Butterworth uses a thing like, he calls the tenth a statistic. A statistic?
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, like a percentage. Like he makes it into a mathematic, which makes it sound ridiculous. And then he says, but if you're not used to giving, the 10% is a way, like training wheels on a bike, that you can begin to practice the law. But then he's going to go on to say that eventually you're going to have to take the training wheels off, that you're even going to have to take away the idea of 10%. And if you've been riding the training wheels for a while and you've been consistently giving, let's say 10, then, and you decide, okay, I'm not going to be like writing it down anymore, you should be probably giving more than 10%.
Yeah,
because now you become a giver.
Finish that starting from there.
So it says,
infants. Infants.
Yeah, so it says, there's a supportive framework for the spiritually immature. Infants may need playpens and children may need fences to keep them from straying into danger. But as people mature, there must come a time when they put away childish things. So that's a quote from the Bible. For instance, a sign of maturity in teenagers is when they decide to come home at a reasonable hour because they need the rest for school the following day, not just because their parents say so, and will take away their allowance if they disobey. So it is with the idea of tithing. If we can accept the early practice as a form of mandatory contribution, then as with the commandments, it was intended as a trellis by which we might be strengthened in our early period of spiritual growth. But the time must come when we let go of the rigid obligation so that we can spontaneously give in love and freedom and have the satisfaction that our giving equals or even exceeds a tithe. So, like Bill and I, we teach this class on Wednesday night at Unity Church, and it was great to just like look at this idea again because see, we started tithing as a spiritual practice, 10% religiously back in April. We took another prosperity class, and as I've said before, I was writing it down. I had a little box, and every single money that came in, I immediately wrote it down. First thing I did, and I put it in the box, and I would tithe that amount of money. And I gave myself 6 months to do that. And immediately my life started transforming because I wasn't doing it like as a way to get money. I was doing it as just like a test. What it is to give, like to not be afraid of money anymore. Like what it would be to acknowledge God as my source and my supply and give everything, including money. Not just say I'm just going to give of my time and my talent, but I'm going to give of my treasure also. And so this book now is saying, now time to put that one away. Like, and I did the math. April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So that's 7 months. I've been tithing religiously 7 months, and now it's time to put that away. And now, because I'm already giving naturally, like I see it's transformed my life. And what we were talking about in the class is this really is a way that we become open, clear channels to hear the voice of God speaking to us where He would have us give, how much He would have us give, where He wants us to give it. See, and if you're observing a rigid rule, you're not listening to the guide. You're not, and if you're just giving it to where you're spiritually fed, as some of, not this book, but as some books suggest, you're still not listening to the guide. Like to me, this is all just like a practice. I was very immature. I didn't know these ideas. But now that I've consistently become a giver, then I can now take away that rigidness, the writing down 10%, and I noticed I give like 20% now or more, because it's like we said in last week, God gives. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son.
Well, it's for me. I love the tithing now. I always felt of tithing in the past, before March of this year. I always felt of tithing as a way to build, for the church to build its buildings and to populate its vision, and it pretty much, it, for me anyway, it had a lot of obligation and guilt attached to it. So I wasn't a cheerful giver. I was a little bit reluctant as a giver.
Yeah.
And I had formed judgments about it. And now, as I tithe, now I'm in a frame of mind where I know that those verses that Jesus said, Jesus talked about giving, seek and you shall find, and all these things shall be given unto you. Consider the lilies of the field. And all of those beautiful verses that Jesus says, give and it shall be given, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. And so he more talks about the spiritual laws that apply, that are just, they are, it is. It's just God is. It's the God is law. That when you do this, this occurs. And when we give, these other things occur. And when Jesus said that God loves a cheerful giver, he's talking about the heart. He's talking about the heart of the giver isn't looking at receiving anything. The heart, but because the heart of the giver is wide open as a channel for God, the giver receives abundantly. And now I live in a space where I just can't wait. It's almost like Wow, I just totally trust that the universe, the universe has has my interest, your interest, everyone that's watching us has our interest. Is just abundant substance everywhere we look. God is in everything I see.
Yeah.
Is a real expression of
Yes.
truth.
I wanted to let you guys know I'm unable to put comments in here because I can't log in, but I see that Jay is posting and Lynn. Jay's here at last, and Lynn says the first step in undoing error is to know that it is an expression of fear, and it is by your faith that amazing things happen. Yes, and I'd love for you guys to type in.
Do you want me to get you logged in there while you read?
If you want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to read at the top of this
so
next
it says
page.
here, it says Jesus is never quoted in support of tithing. The reason is obvious. He makes only 2 references to the practice. Let's sit up on this couch here. And in both instances, tithing is referred to as a practice of someone who is being criticized. It's so funny when you see a video of yourself, you look at your hair, it's like, oh my god, what a mess. It's a funny thing. This is funny business being on a video and you see your bra strap. There's Mariella. Come say hi. You've got to come say hi. This is my best.
Say hi.
This is my best friend. She's my sister, actually. She'll come in a moment. So, he says, in one of the tirades against the Pharisees, Jesus says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, you blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel." This is certainly not a recommendation for tithing. Crack me up. And then in his parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Pharisee stood and prayed, "God, I thank thee that I am not like the other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get." Then Jesus said that the tax collector would be justified, not the Pharisee, against no tribute to the tithing practice. This is not to infer that Jesus condemned the practice of tithing, but it is to realize that he saw the keeping of the rigid code of tithing as a ritual far less important than the weightier matters of consciousness.
Okay, here we go.
Alright, I'm in.
Yeah.
Since he did make reference to the subject, certainly, I love this part, he said, and since he did make reference to the subject, certainly if he had felt that tithing was a must in his high way of spiritual unfoldment, he would have stated a clear position, but he didn't do so. It is important to note that Jesus was very specific in his teaching of the law of giving. Okay? So it's about giving. Note that we are drawing a definite distinction between the practice of tithing and the spontaneous process of giving. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. So there it is.
I'm not sure where you're. Can you get the comments?
Chat.
Okay. Looks like maybe you don't have any new comments on there.
Can you guys type in? I think I'm in now.
I think she's in. Somebody make a comment.
I think it took all the other comments out when you got in.
Yeah, see if somebody.
Social
There they are.
stream.
There they are.
There we go.
Good.
You're gorgeous.
Okay.
Gorgeous. You are.
You are. Okay. The Old Testament dealt with the law of giving, which is fundamentally supported on the basis of the practice of tithing, which was completely coercive. Tithing was something the Israelites were required to do. Jesus taught the law of consciousness. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That one always has a choice, though one must live with the effects of his or her choice.
Mm-hmm.
You receive as you give. And if you would receive more, you can give more.
Yeah.
But you have complete freedom. In the Old Testament times, tithing was an enforced discipline laid down for people who did not have the spiritual development
I love
to
that.
work with the divine
I
law.
love that. Yeah.
It took its place alongside hundreds of laws and observances governing everything from sanitation to meditation. As training wheels on a bicycle help a youngster to learn to ride unaided, so all these laws were right and appropriate for the people of that day. And actually, for me too, I I I like tithing, and I also like taking the training wheels off, because what I like more than the structure is I like hearing the internal intuitive, the guide that says write a check for $300, or write a check for 500, or give a tithe to this person, or give a tithe to that. That leaves me open, and it continues. It allows a freshness of the universe divine to tell me, to give me, like the best, the thing to do. He who sent me will direct me. I will be content wherever I am because he who sent me will direct me. And so that's just part of the process. But before I got there, I needed the training wheels. I needed the tithing practice. And I'll continue to practice tithing. If I don't get a word otherwise, I'll continue to practice tithing, just because I totally value the system that's in place of as I give. Now I don't really want to give as a ritual. I don't want to fall into that hole and make it a law. I just really want to continue to the practice and be open to where would you have me give?
Yeah, well, I actually like this last. We want to try to get through the whole chapter, but we're not sure if we're going to. But this last, at the very last, like two. Let's see, where was it? Okay, here we go. It's on page 194, and it's like the second paragraph down. It says, ultimately, you cannot really know that you are a giver of the whole tithe. So what it talks about in this chapter is the whole tithe. You must be giving all of yourself. So, like for me, I was giving, I thought all of myself before, but I wasn't. I was still afraid to give money. I was still keeping like a part that I thought needed to be managed by me. But now I'm giving all of myself. My life belongs to God. That everything I have is God's. Everything. That I'm here sent by God and I know it. And that I'm just going to be in the flow of all of this now. And so I started by practicing with my money. Saying, okay, no, I truly mean it. I'm not afraid. And all that I have belongs to God. That God is my source of my supply. And that we're just being channels now for substance to flow through us. So it says, ultimately you cannot really know that you are a giver of the whole tithe until you test yourself by putting away the practice for a period, even 1 month is a good test, and still wind up with an equivalent amount through spontaneous free will giving. So I can tell you that this chapter to me this week, that's what I decided to do. I'm giving up tithing. And now I'm a spontaneous giver. It's just like what Bill just said and I was expressing earlier, is that now I'm just listening. Like we're reading this book now with Mariella, who we hope's going to come on the screen. Come here. Come here. Here she comes. Ah!
In my pajamas.
Okay, she's in her pajamas. You gotta see her shirt. She's got the best shirt ever. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it.
Nobody sees me.
Okay, we gotta move it that way. Here she comes. Ah!
My best friend.
She has a shirt that says "Give," and then on the back, can you see it? Give back.
Give back.
So while we have her here,
she's
not a tither in the typical sense, but she'll be a good one to talk about this, because I've known Mariella for 12 years, 10 years, 12 years. She is the most miracle-minded person and the most generous giver. She just gives everything away. She gives all of herself, her money, her time. Like, is there anything you can say on the subject of giving and how it's been for you? Camera's right there.
I'm not such a camera person.
Her new thing is she's being courageous.
Okay. Well, I guess I had a good teacher when I moved to Wisconsin. I moved to a spiritual community, and the main sentence that I would hear every day was "give everything away." So I started doing that. But I still also, it was easy for me though because I didn't have any money, and I still see that money. I was listening to Bill and Lisa from the background, and it is not that easy because money seems to be something that you have to manage yourself, and it's like, so I don't know, I guess I've given money too, but I feel like that would be my, it was very inspiring to listen to Bill and Lisa because that's the one thing that I still have fear around, and I never seem to have very much money, so it's not really a big concern. But I also feel like I'm actually feeling like I'm holding back with money. There's always some secrecy around it, and I have a lot of like negative messages from that I carry around about it. So it was easy because I was living in a community where everything was taken care of. If your car needed a repair, somebody was there to repair it. And now I'm living in the world, and it's a little bit different with money. Like I'm having some sadness and some stickiness around it, like some kind of like stuckness. So it's actually very, very helpful to hear you guys share about it and to, because it's gonna be a good practice. Yeah, I'm really good at giving everything else away, but I don't have money, so it's easy for me to say that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's this is the thing. Like, I like this kind of honest expression.
Yeah,
and
me
this
too.
is how it was for me because see, 6 months ago, I was in the same place. I'm like, okay, like I've been with the course for 20 years. I can call myself an advanced spiritual teacher, but in my absolute moment of honesty, I had to say no. There's this spot, like you said, it's a space of stuckness and stickiness. It's like that, and that's just me being honest. I had to say, okay, I'm willing to listen to another teacher, and I'm willing to practice. And the practice was for 6 months. That for 6 months, starting on that day that I heard that teacher say, can you give 10%? To wherever you're being spiritually fed, and to do it consistently. And I said yes. I said from this moment on, every single dollar that comes in, I'm going to give a dime on. And that was my birthday weekend. I started on my birthday weekend in May, and I got on the first day like 4 birthday checks, and I tithed on them. And then the next day I got another check. Money started coming to me, and I just started writing it down. And I saw that I was like allowing myself to become an open channel in these areas of like tangled fear around money were just like loosening. And now I'm 7 months into the practice of tithing, and now I want to give up the decimal point. And I'm being challenged now. I can see like I'm just listening, and I'm giving more than I was before. I'm giving more than 10% now for sure. And it feels so good. Because money keeps pouring in. It's just like, oh my God, I really am here just for God. Like we really are here just for the awakening. We're just here to be the perfect demonstration of the creation. Mariella was saying the coolest thing the other day in Boston. Like, we're co-creators.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're co-creators. Right. We're actually here to really create just like God was creating.
Okay, so I'm going to swing it over. Say
I
goodbye. Say
Bye.
goodbye. You can stay there. Please stay there.
Okay.
Yeah, I love, you know, what Mary Ellis said in the Teachers of God meeting
Mhm.
was, was what you said was perfect because, um, and also the tithing principle and the visioning principle and the goal setting principle and the you know to you don't give to get, but it does require trust. It does require an involvement. You know, there's that Quaker saying that says that the Quakers say, "Pray and move your feet."
Yeah.
In other words, you gotta do something. You can't just sit there and say, "Oh God, please, you know, pay my bills for me."
Mhm.
You have to, you know, give and it shall be given. So it's almost like a stepping into process.
Yeah.
And in order for us to practice co-creating, we have to we have to like give. The universe is waiting for us to give it something to work with.
Yeah.
You know, and that is okay. I'm going to give, and then just and just participate in this
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I wanted to actually. There's some comments coming in, and Jay asked a really good question, and Lynn says on the spot. You're on the spot.
On the
Or
spot.
you're on the spot, or I'm on the when someone's
Okay.
on the spot. Jay asked a question. He says, "Don't you think it's easier for an individual to tithe than joint tithing by husband and wife?" Terry Joe says, "Thank you for your honesty." And but that was a good question because uh, Bill has more money than I do. Like and when we first came together, he was paying for more things, and I was feeling like, okay, I could continue to do this. Like we're together, and it's our money. You know, he says it's our money, but I wanted to know what it was for me to really come into a place where Bill's not my source and supply, God is.
Right.
So we had a conversation about it. I said, I really appreciate all the help you've been giving to me, and all he's so generous, and all the like how generous you are. And I said, but I know that I have to really money has to come to me too. Like money has to come, and it can feel like how's money going to come to me? You know, like because it can be so easy to start depending on where the income's coming from. And we started saying, okay, like the money that comes to me is what I'm going to tithe, and what comes to him, he tithes. So when he does a construction job, he tithes on the construction job. And
or whatever income I get.
But I'm just saying, like, if you could, if it comes to you,
right,
you tithe on it, and
right.
if it comes to me, I tithe on it, and that's just how it works for us. And in our prosperity class, we did say you do have to have a conversation with your spouse if you're together. Like, what portion of the money is yours? Like, maybe if you both want to tithe, that's fine. But if your wife doesn't want to tithe, then you can figure out how much can you tithe. And
yeah, and it really, I mean, what I've seen in couples that have um, uh, in couples that have, you know, they've structured themselves um, in a single source, like their household. Like, what if he's the only one that's earning money for the household?
yeah.
Well, they have to have a, a conscious conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call that conversation?
Yeah, that's it.
A conscious conversation. You
But
have
the
to
thing is like that's a limited belief that the money's only going to come to the breadwinner. That's a limited belief. Money should be coming from all directions because God is your source and supply. So if you think, well, I'm just the mother, I'm just the wife, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and money doesn't come to me. To me, that's where, like with Bill, I wanted to say, like, no, I want to challenge this idea that he takes care of the money. He doesn't take care of the money. God takes care of the money. and then to begin to see like money just flies in from all directions. Like suddenly you get an inheritance, or just, who knows where it comes from.
Well, that's a more progressive way to look at it. Some households aren't both spiritual at the same time, and some households have one person that appears to be bringing money in. And in that case, what I've seen is that there's a conscious conversation about, okay, I want to, for my half of the money, I want to tithe on it. And what you'll see is, because if half of the of the relationship is a giving unit, it's gonna receive the benefits of that giving. That person doesn't even have to be the person that's the breadwinner. They're setting the family up as a principle of giving, even by the non-spiritual earner bringing in the money. The half of that unit being the giving side, it will still access that giving principle. That's what I believe in.
Yeah, and Jay says, I mean, and he says, I mean, in reality, not as in an ideal situation, and that's where you just have to have a conversation. You have to sit down and figure out, okay, like what part of the money is mine that I can tithe on if your wife doesn't want to tithe on it.
Well, and then the other thing is, I mean, the best of all worlds is to just go within and say, okay, Jesus, I need some help here. I want to jump into the river of tithing. I want to jump into the river of giving. I want to be a giving unit that is in the flow of abundance, the way you spoke about it, the way you said, in all of these spiritual principles. And actually, that's what Lisa did when Lisa said, you know what, Bill, I really appreciate you being so generous, but I want to be the one giving, and I want to see what the universe does through my own giving process. And as soon as she did that,
I got a check for $10,000.
As soon as she did that, she got a check for $10,000
out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, and it's what we
It's what we started the nonprofit.
It's what we started the nonprofit foundation from, and it's really interesting. Is the week before she got the check, we didn't know the check was coming. We're looking at the people that were sending love offerings to Lisa for the work that she does, and I was going, wow, we really should set up a nonprofit for the way that this money is coming in for you. It wasn't something that I was seeing come in for me. I was seeing it come in for Lisa, and we were sitting on the beach and talking about the way money was coming in, and I'm, as being a businessman, I'm wanting to say, okay, how can this occur in a way that where everybody wins? Mm-hmm. Well, everybody wins when she gets set up to receive these tithes and offerings, and everyone else wins because they can write it off on their tax bill.
Right, and Terry Jo says she likes the 10%. She took the Edwin Gaines class.
Yep.
And she says, I tithe 10% of my gross income since I heard Edwin Gaines speak in April 2010. So I heard her in April 2012. That's when I started. It made a big difference, and I like the percentage number. For me, it makes sense.
Yep.
And Rose says, I have a lot of fear about committing money, especially with mortgage and single parents. And Terry Jo says, it has completely connected me with spirit. And this is where, like Lynn says, I think it's not really about the money. It is a sense of true abundance. And, like, for me, like, I really agree with what Terry Jo said. Is that it's made a huge difference in my life. Right. Mariella knows me for 10 years, and she knows I didn't have any money. And I had a story around it, and I kept saying, I don't need it. It's okay. I'm fine. I'm good. But I wasn't. I like Mariella's honesty here. I like to say, yeah, I have a stuckness about it. And for me, I just wanted to move through my fear about the money. Like, I thought, I need this money. When it comes in, I need it. I have bills and I'm not paying. And I had to look at that. I had to say, okay, wow. Like, I think I need to take care of myself. Where's God in this picture that I think I need this money? There's no God in this picture when I think I have to hold on to this. And
Well,
so what Edwin Gaines said is just give it 6 months.
yeah.
Just
Well,
try it for 6 months.
her prosperity book works.
It does.
It may not be accurate scripturally, but it sure does let go of those false beliefs of thinking that of living in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And those are also those are beliefs. So the poverty belief is a belief of lack and limitation, and you can get stuck there, or you can be on the side of prosperity and abundance. And I feel that Jesus talked about abundance. He didn't talk about lack. He talked about how to live in abundance, but with your heart.
Right.
And all of these things. I mean, if you have a choice of to live in poverty or prosperity, that's a pretty easy math. That's a pretty easy decision. You know, it feels pretty good to be able to go out and spend money to eat good food or to give things away to people you because you're living in prosperity.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels good. It just feels
It
good
does.
to go buy a new set of sheets or to buy a new pair of boots or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to read this here. We're like right in the last couple minutes before we go into the homework for next week. But it's on page 187, and it says, "It is unfortunate and also misleading that tithing is presented as a divine law rather than as a training discipline by which to work toward knowledge of the law of giving. Sometimes it is said that tithing is a magic cure for all ills, but there is no magic whatever in tithing. If prosperity or healing results from tithing, it has come through the fulfilling of the law. As you give, so shall you receive. Bicycle riding is based on the law of balance working with the law of inertia. The training wheels have nothing to do with the laws by which the bicycle is propelled. They simply help the rider to experience the working of the law."
Mm-hmm.
And so he says in here, we're not going to be able to read the whole chapter, but I like that part in here where he talks about the lady who starts tithing thinking she's going to get a raise and she's going to get a promotion, and she's been tithing consistently, and then at the end of the period she didn't get the promotion. But when they looked at her work performance, she was always late on the job, she was not giving, it says, "Yet if you analyze her job performance as her superiors do, you will immediately see that she does not give much of herself to her work, is not very effective, frequently arrives late, and talks to coworkers incessantly during the day. She feels that by tithing things will change for her. It could be said that there is a raise in salary for her, which will become effective when she does." And then the sentence I love here, "She tithes, but she does not give." You see, so that's where, like, you don't want to use tithing as some sort of a way to manipulate the law so that money comes back to you. It's just a training discipline that you're going to start practicing so you can look at your fear of money and get over it. That you're going to start to see, I'm not afraid of this green paper. What are you afraid of? Green paper. Give it away. And then, but when you first start, you'll be very afraid.
Well, and that's why that's why I love the principle of tithing that brings up fear. Because if tithing is bringing up fear, it's only bringing up fear so that you can get rid of the fear.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if it's 2%, 5%, or 10%. If it's bringing up fear, it's bringing it up so that you can let it go.
Yeah, these guys are, I think Lynn's talking about her husband, and Lynn's saying, "Holy Spirit guides me," and Rick doesn't say anything, even though he is the one working. And Maria says, "We waste money on so much frivolous stuff, and yet what matters is your spiritual growth." And then, this is good, you guys are all like emailing each other. He says, "Lynn, why doesn't Rick say anything? Is he joyful in your tithing even though he doesn't say anything?" He says, "I didn't mean that antagonistically. Rick is not involved in my spiritual path. He is an atheist, haha. But he trusts me that I am doing the right thing always."
That's awesome.
Gotcha, love conquers.
Mm-hmm.
Amen to that then.
Yeah.
And I think too the other thing is when you start tithing and your spouse sees what's going on, that money starts coming to you, they'll jump on board with you.
Yeah, they don't have to be. I mean, they don't even have to. I mean, if they don't believe in God or they're not on the spiritual path, it's not going to matter because the laws. You know, it's the attitude of gratitude. When we get into the vein of giving, the law is gonna apply.
Yeah. Well, do you remember when we started? You weren't going to take the class. He's always tied, but in the way Jay that you said, Jay said a comment earlier. I didn't say it out loud to the group, but his church this week was down $10,000, so they bring up the tithing conversation, which is what most churches do. It's trying to get money income into the church, so they give you the tithing speech, and that's not true tithing.
That's tithing. Actually, that's tithing into need, and that's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
That's not giving. That's tithing into need. That's saying that and when you tithe into that, it's not following spiritual law.
Yeah.
It's not following the law of giving. It's following the law of lack.
Yeah. So he comes from that he for 25 years he was involved in a church, gave a lot of money, and so he was kind of like with the tithing idea. He was like, no,
I'm not tithing.
I'm not going there. You take that class by yourself.
Yeah, you
and
can
I was
take
like,
it alone.
fine with me. So I started taking the class, and I just was so excited. I was just like, oh my god, that.
Well, what got me,
and he got so like, I want to be involved with this.
What got me was it wasn't because you hadn't received any money yet.
Book.
It was the affirmations.
Yeah.
It was going. I'm looking at those affirmations and going, wow, I like these
affirmations. Way of
affirmations.
looking at tithing.
I like the way this is being seen, and I jumped in, and as soon as I jumped in, I said, okay, I'm in. Yeah. I'm into 10%. And
in the first week, you got a big check.
In the first week, I got a big check of $7,500. I went
$750.
I did the tithe numbers on it, and I mean, I always have plenty of money and more. I always have a bank of money, a bank full of money.
I'm now running on reserve battery. I got 5% battery. This is going to shut down in a second.
So. Anyway, who was it that it says that it was Jenny?
Said what?
That said that, or no, that says that she likes the practice of the 10%?
Terry Jo.
Terry Jo, yeah.
Yep.
I'm with you, Terry Jo. I like the practice of it, and I also, like Lisa, I want to listen to the voice for where I give. Because I definitely want to be following the voice, not a systematic structure in all the things that I do.
Yeah.
In everything. So.
Okay, I need to go plug in. My computer's about to shut down, and then we move into.
Then we move into next week. Yeah. Week 7.
Right
next week is our last week on this subject. We'll stay tuned to see if Spirit has us come back with another subject and we do the broadcast again. I'm sure we will. We have actually, I know we will because we had a great meeting. Lynn was involved the other night on a new unfolding topic of healing and using Ustream. We might use this venue to Ustream healing events, healing opportunities, healing guidance around the United States, and maybe we don't have anyone abroad right now, but we were on the phone with or on Skype with about I think 6 or 7 people the other night, and we're looking at how we get guided to start a healing Teachers of God healing ministry on Ustream, so stay tuned for that also. So Lisa is back.
I'm back.
And we'll move into the
homework for this week, for next week, on the study guide. I don't think I sent it to you. You're either going to like it or you're not going to like it, but here it is. If you've not been tithing, it's time to start tithing. So spend some time in prayer contemplating tithing. If you have not done so, begin consistent giving at some level. So it's actually not the amount that you give. What's important is that you're consistent. And that's the mind training. You just got to be consistent in it.
And it's really, I mean, if you look at it, if there's fear around anything, that's blocking the awareness to love's presence. That's it. If there's fear around anything, it's keeping us from raising our consciousness to another dimension of consciousness. And so that fear, if it's money, if it's your job, if it's your relationship, if it's something that you're involved in that you don't want to be involved in, whatever the fear is or whatever the behavior is that is bringing up a charge, it's only being presented so that we can raise our consciousness and enter into that space where Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Planes, consciousness, dimensions of awareness. If it were not so, I would have told you.
Yeah. And so I send these out every Sunday, so I'm going to be sending out as soon as we get off the call. I'm going to be sending out the study guide for next week. And what Bill said about the affirmations, that's what got him into the tithing practice this time around. It really is the affirmations that do the work. So this week was, and this, you would have received this last Sunday. So I don't know if you've been following, like if you've really been affirming, but these are affirmations for the weeks that you really should be using on a daily basis. I have renewed my thoughts and beliefs, and I am a positive influence on my world as I move forward with a consciousness of prosperity. So see, if you're living every day like that, I'm a positive influence in the world. I just live like that. Like, I'm a light in this world. And I have nothing to fear. It's the affirmations that start to change you.
And that's true.
Yeah, of course it's true.
And it's contagious.
And that's what we, if you guys remember from a couple weeks ago, it says in this book that an affirmation is not a statement that you say so it becomes true. You affirm it because it's true. So I say I'm the light of the world, not because I hope to be the light of the world. I affirm it because it's true. I am the light of the world. So when I say money comes to me from all directions and I am rich, I'm not saying it so I hope money comes to me from all directions and I'm rich. I'm saying it because I'm affirming it because it's already true, and because of that, the money comes to me from all directions and I am rich.
And if you say it and you don't believe it, that's perfect too, because you take the unbelief and you give it away. You take what you don't want and exchange it for what you do, and you don't have to do the work. You just really have to. If Jesus is the leader for you, or if the Holy Spirit or divine Father, Mother, God, or if it's just the divine universe is God for you, just take what you don't believe and say, you know what, I'm not believing this. And just give it away. Just look at it. Look at the belief, and then just rest. Just rest in the divine love, and watch that unbelief be exchanged for belief.
And we have the coolest Wednesday night class. I mean, I'm going to miss that class, but we've got some courageous ones in that class. But we have this one girl. She gives. I think we might have already said this, but she was in just a lot of poverty. You know, just a lot of fear around money. And she just decided she was going to, as a rule, put $10 down on every bill when she went to a restaurant.
No matter how much the bill was, if it was a $2 cup of coffee, if it was a toast and coffee, she was still going to give a $10 tip.
And then she gave $100. She was saying how she decided that voice was telling her $100.
Yep.
She was like in a diner or something. It wasn't a very big bill, and she wanted to stick around and see the reaction. And she saw that was ego. She just saw, like, I'm not here, and she was so tempted that she had to force herself to leave the restaurant.
She says, I do not live in
I
fear
do not live in
about
fear.
money anymore. I can
And she
honestly
doesn't.
say I do not live in fear
Yeah.
about money anymore.
Yeah,
She is totally
Yeah.
centered in that.
And she
statement.
gives of her whole tithe. She's telling us how she goes to her neighbor's house. It's just this older woman who's lonely, you know, and she just goes over there and she'll go over there with something to eat and she'll just hang out. She goes, I don't know why I do that, but she likes it, and you know, and so you're starting to really look at like, where are you giving?
Yeah, you don't just give, it's not just money. When we give of our time and our talents, that's also giving.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus says in one of the verses in this last chapter that by the measure that you give, it will be measured back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So also when you give of yourself, that's why amazing things happen when you give, and you give it without expecting anything in return.
Yeah. So next week, so the homework for this week is to start tithing. And this one other girl in our class, she just tithed today. Today I got a tithe from her. She was so afraid. She told us this story. She got a direct guidance to give a friend of hers $100, but she feels bad. She thinks if she gives $100, her friend is going to feel bad. But she's been sitting on this $100. She actually put the $100 in an envelope, and she was going to send it anonymously. But then she knows that the friend's going to know, like, the little, you know, postal code, who sent it. So she goes, I haven't sent it yet. It's been sitting for a month. And that's where, like, we all were really saying, that's the Holy Spirit telling you to give. And you can tell her, here it is. You know, I've been blessed by this money and I want to give you some. Thank you for all you do. You don't have to give to need. Just give it because you've been blessed by the money and you're just putting it back into circulation again. And so it's just like, I have teachers who push me and challenge me. They do. And it's not comfortable. But I like it because I wouldn't do this on my own. And so it's good to take a class like this and to really look at like where you might be resisting and you might think, I don't want to do it. You don't have to do anything, but you might want to look at that idea.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to just look at that idea and say, well, all right. And then just decide to just jump. Just say, okay, I'm just going to give it a try. And I'm just going to consistently give just for 6 months.
Yeah.
So next week is the last, I think there's 2 more chapters. It's week 7, setting intentions, and it's receiving and blessing statements of intention, time, talent, and treasure. So we did this today in our church, and we had to sign little covenants, how much of our time, what we're going to give financially, and also what we're going to give, what our spiritual gifts we're going to give back to our church.
Or anywhere. They didn't have to go to our church.
Well, one of them was to, one of the lines was to the church.
Yeah, well, what percentage would you give to the church if you're in it? It wasn't an obligation. In fact, I love the way the Unity, at least this Unity, the way they practice getting involved in the congregation. There's no judgment. There's no guilt trip. If you feel to give, or you're being pulled to give, it's really from the heart.
But it is scary. It was scary for me because even though I've been giving consistently, and I give way more than I've ever given before, it was how much am I going to give in 2013? And I thought, okay, I don't want to put a number that's too high, but I do expect to increase my salary next year. And so I wanted to put that. I wanted to really, how much am I going to give every week? And see, now I actually haven't put anything in writing. I give every week, but it's not in writing. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to write this down, that I'm going to give this much money every week. But, you know, that's the thing. You kind of look at where, I'm a little afraid of that. All right, that's what I'm going to do then.
Well, it's cool. It does 2 things. It looks at the fear.
Yeah.
And I also had some a little bit of resistance to that, to committing to write that down, because I haven't done that in a long time. and it always put me on a guilt trip in the past. So I just took the number of what I gave in the last 6 months, and I multiplied it times 2, and I put
Oh,
at
that's
least
good.
I put at least this much.
A little increase.
And I also wrote at least this much. So
Yeah.
my idea is I don't want to put a limit on what my expectations are. I love the idea that Unity teaches on the principle of setting an intention,
Yeah.
because that is where we co-create.
Yeah.
When we set an intention, we are co-creating. We're saying, universe, come here. I got an intention set up here. Join me. And so all I'm doing is saying, I'd love to do this. This feels so good. It feels solid. I'm in on this. Come join me. And so then we're actually putting our feet to the prayer. Okay,
and
so
it's 9:15.
it's 9:15.
We're at
It's
the
time
end of
for
our
us
time.
to go. The next, our final
Last
week's
class,
chapter is on
setting intentions.
setting intentions, a new world order.
Yeah. So there's 2 more chapters to read.
So
We love you.
we love you, and thank you for joining us tonight. You guys are awesome, and we'll see you next week, next Sunday.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.